Yes, so we'll start with the next part of the SA 610. Okay, before that, we will have a quick recap of what we have learned in previous session. So we had done with SA 300. We are done with SA 610, sorry, 600, where you have got audit procedures. Okay, so we have got acceptance as a principal auditor. Then you have got checking of the competence, very important, audit procedures, reporting and conclusion. Okay, audit procedures, you have to advise, review, check the findings and see how you can incorporate it in the audit report. So this is all about your SA 600 in a quick small way. Then 610 we started. Okay, when we talk about the 610, primarily there are two elements called a work or a person. Now, of whom? Of internal audit function. Now, what is this function? This function is more like a department. What exactly? Why they exist? They exist primarily for, we can say, objective. Why they exist? For assurance services or consultancy services within the organization. Okay, and what they do? Scope. Okay, so they have got governance related work, they have got risk management related work, or they have got internal control related work. So when you talk about internal control, which all areas? Operations, financial reporting, compliance, asset safeguarding. Okay, so same thing there. And why it is important? We can add one more question. Why external auditor should do this evaluation? So that you can better understand the effectiveness, the primary objective, why you are going to work, why you need this person. Where it is told why you need to do this evaluation, that is told in chapter 16. Like, what is the objective of evaluation? So primarily here, when you say what is the objective of evaluation of internal audit function, who should evaluate? The external auditor. Why? Because the primary purpose here to understand about the effectiveness of the internal controls. Because he may want to rely on their work with regard to the internal work. Okay, so what do you mean by evaluation? Evaluation means objective appraisal of the activity. You check whether they are adequately staffed or whatever. This is what you check. Okay, so I hope this is the first part. Then we started with the objective. Objective, you have got three. First, you need to determine whether can you use work or person. Okay, if yes for work, you need to check adequacy. If yes for person, you need to direct, supervise, review. This is all about this. Now, if you decide, okay, first let us go to the work. What is the factor you will need to consider? How do you determine whether can you use? Okay, determine whether can I use depends upon three elements. One, objectivity of that internal audit function. Now, how do you know whether it is objective? For this, you have to see the organization structure. Second, competency. For this, you need to say who are there in their team. Are there qualified people? And the third, you need to see whether they are disciplined approach. How to know, do they have their quality control policies? Do they have the proper documentation? Okay, so these things gives you evidence about the discipline, competence and objective. Fine. Once you have happy with all these three elements, second thing, what you are supposed to do? You are supposed to decide the nature and extent of work that can be used. You have to decide now. Now, what is the nature of the work you can use? Nature of the work includes your test of controls, then your counting procedures, then you have done the effectiveness of the test of controls we discussed, substantive procedure having limited judgments, then review of subsidiary information whose significance is very low, and regulatory compliances. Okay, so these are all the activities you can use. When you cannot use, or when you should reduce that, the extent of realize when you should reduce, when you have got significant judgments. Okay, where you have got significant judgments in planning, okay, in evaluation of the evidence, in high ROMM area, plus if the objectivity is low and competency is low, you should reduce their dependency on the internal auditors. You have to perform it yourself. Then is there any special considerations? Yes, we have got some special consideration. One, we need to sufficiently get involved, plus we have to communicate to TCWG to what extent we are using their work. Okay, the next element comes, what is that you decided now. In the second step, you decided which area to use, how much to use. Third, what exactly you do when you are using, how to use. Okay, first you need to discuss, you need to tell your requirement, then you need to read their internal audit reports, and then you need to apply your procedures. This is very similar to your SA 600. You discuss, no? You advise. Then you review the written summary, which is nothing but reading the report here. And then you apply the supplementary tests. Okay, so they what you perform? Test. So the nature, timing, extent, like what should I do, how much should I perform, that depends upon the judgments, risk, objectivity and competency of the internal auditors. Yes, so this is all about what we have discussed in the past. I hope it's very clear to you with this map type of thing. Okay, we are not written very clearly. Yeah, but somewhere when we write often, when we practice this, yes, this thing sits in your brain. Yes, so we will move on to the next element called determining whether can we use the internal auditors to provide direct assistance. Since we are talking about the human beings. Okay, I will give an analogy to you. There is one, say, boy of 12 years who comes to you asking for some work. Now, can you use that boy and assign some works to them? First question to you. What is the very first thing comes to your mind? That's why I gave this picture here. The very first thing, okay, can I use their work? Now, if I can use, to what extent? Okay, alternatively, this boy could have been 15 years of old. Can I use this person's work now? If yes, to what extent? See, what is the very first factor you should evaluate? The very first factor you need to evaluate is whether are you prohibited from using direct assistance of the internal auditors. The very first thing you need to evaluate. So, if you want to use the people of the internal auditors for your audit work, you don't want to use their work. The very first thing is the statute or my local jurisdiction bans me from doing this. Just like in India, if the boy is of 12 years, you cannot use them. But if it's of 15 years, you can use them for your work. Similarly, in India, we don't have any prohibitions in the Companies Act or in SEBI regulations or any regulation that you should not use the work of internal auditors. Direct assistance of internal auditors. But if you go to UK, there is a very clear-cut restrictions, okay, put by some council that external auditor should not use people of internal auditors. Okay, so very first thing, where external auditor has been prohibited by the law or regulation to provide direct assistance, it is relevant for the principal auditor to consider prohibition also extend to component auditors also, and if so, address this communication to the component auditor. So if you are feeling, if you find that there is some restrictions on you not to use the internal auditor, then please communicate to all the component auditors also, because this message has to go to everyone. Nobody should be using. Okay. Once you are okay that you can use this, so if so, that means if the boy is of 12 years, then second part of the standard is not applicable only. Means you will never use their work. If the prohibition happens, then we need not look into point number B, evaluation, all these things we don't need to look because we are not going to use them. Okay, there is no restriction like this particular case, this scenario. What is the second thing I need to check is the evaluates existence and significant threat. Okay, so which threat? So what they have done, no students, in the study material they have again used the same heading, using internal auditors to provide direct assistance is not provided, and evaluation of significant threat, and again the same para has been repeated here. Okay, so we can organize it something like this. Just like when you talk about the internal auditors work, you see objectivity, competency, disciplined approach. When you see their people, only two things you need to evaluate: whether prohibition exists and objectivity and competency threat exists. Okay, what is this objectivity and competence threat? We'll discuss. So you need to evaluate the existence of significant threats to objectivity and competence of the internal auditor. Okay, so external auditor shall, again the same para they repeated, shall, how to know whether do you have any threat to objectivity and competence? You need to inquire the internal auditors regarding the interest and the relationship. Please understand, friend, internal auditors are the employees of the organization. Now, they may have some threat to objectivity or competency. Competency, though, you come to know by talking to them. Okay, they may not have prior experience. Like you will ask how to know whether there is a threat to competency. Okay, certain work, no, which you wanted to assign to this boy. This boy has never done it. And from his very face, he doesn't look like he will be able to execute it. He is going to learn something. This is a threat to the, because you're not yet given the task. But somewhere you feel that yes, this task he may not be able to do. What is threat to objectivity? They may be biased because they may have certain relationships and the interest in the organization. They may be owning the shares of the company. See, external auditor and their staff cannot own the shares of the company. But an internal auditor could have been holding the shares. Now, if you use them for your work, you have got your unpredictable things and you have got some high risk areas, fraud risk matters comes, external confirmations done. See, do you expect that this person will work objectively with you? Because they know you are the auditor only for 5 years, then comes only once in a year. After you go, after this work is complete, you have to go back to the same organization, you have to report to the same boss. So do you think these people will show devotion to you or to their boss? Okay, they might do some work for you. Okay, it's more like you are asking one neighbor's son or the daughter to do some work to you. No, their loyalty is for their parents, no. Their loyalty is not for you. They have come to you only for one particular work. But be careful when you are inviting somebody to that work, okay, to your work, there can be some threat to objectivity or competency. I hope it is very clear to you, this example. So you need to evaluate only two elements, whether are you prohibited and whether there is any threat. Threat to what? Objectivity and interest. Now, how do you know? Okay, objectivity refers to ability to perform the work without any bias, conflict of interest, undue influence. Like who can influence? Their boss may influence. They may call in the night and ask what is happening there, what your auditor is doing. Or conflict of interest. This person may be owning shares. Okay. Or having bias. That means they only have done that work. Like inventory observation, they only did. You call them now and to do it. Okay. So if they have made a mistake earlier, will they come and tell you? They will become biased. Okay. So this is what is called objectivity. Now, how to know about whether they have got, whether there is any, what to inquire? First question. How to know whether there is a threat? The only way you can do it by inquiring with the internal auditors. Like, do you have any threat to objectivity and competency? Now, what are the factors you need to evaluate? Evaluation of significance of threat to objectivity. You need to evaluate the following factors. First, you need to check the organizational status and policies on procedure objectivity. Again, if the internal auditors are placed below audit committee, yes, you can be said that they will be more objective. Okay, so because internal auditors themselves are objective, the head of the internal auditor themselves is objective because they report to audit committee. Audit committee takes care of their appointment. Second, do they have any family and personal relationship with the individual working responsible aspect to the entity? Because what could have happened? There is one CEO, also there is one CFO. He might have had one person who is his relative. So he could have done the recommendation and got him here. And this relative could have been placed in the internal audit department. Whether this was planned by the CEO, not planned by the CFO, we don't know. But if you want to use these people to do certain work, now see, they have got a relationship with the CFO. They can communicate something to the CFO. So that's what you need to take care. So what is the relationship and the family relationship, do they exist? Because it's going to create the threat. Association with the division or the department to which the work related. Like inventory count I told, they only did, or they are having some operational activities. Now they have got an association to that department, like procurement department. Somewhere they have done some work there. Okay. Somewhere they have been, previously they were doing that work and then they got shifted. See, who are the generally the internal auditor? Like for example, I'll give my example only. In our company, internal audit is called a MAS, Management Assurance Services. This is the name of the department for us in Vedanta. Now, they from time to time, no, they come with the offer for recruitment. Okay, I also had applied once. Now, when they apply, no, they can get people from any of the department. When they applied, I was in commercial department actually, purchase department. I also could have gone there. Okay, then they would have given me more activities related to commercial. Okay, but that's an internal matter. Like from commercial department, if they hire me, tomorrow they may send me for the audit of, okay, will they send me for the audit of commercial department? They may not send. Why? Because if I go there, I only might have placed some orders there. And if will I come and tell, no sir, there is some mistake in that order? Who placed? I only placed when I was an employee of the commercial department. So this is what you need to see, that you should, the person whom you select should not have been any association to that department. Because previously, before coming to internal audit department, this could have been working in accounts department, in MIS department. And the last one, significant financial interest other than remuneration. Like I told you, shares they are holding. Okay, so this is very important. They are not asked you any question, but you need to practice this. Okay, so the 4 factors you need to consider while evaluating the objectivity. Now, when you should not use, already we discussed similar thing. When we should not use the work, we should not use the work if there is a threat, objectivity is low, competency is low, no disciplined approach. Similarly, external auditor shall not use the work if there is a significant threat to the objectivity, or internal auditor lacks the competency to perform the work. Like you called a neighbor's boy, okay, to do some work. If you see that there is a threat to the objectivity, they have got some interest here in your house. Like for example, say, just to give you an example, between you and your neighbor, there is some dispute with related to land. There is some document. Now, when you call that neighbor's kid here, now there is a chances that since they get access to your document, your almirah and all, that one document he may take. This is an objectivity issue. If you bring another neighbor, this side neighbor, with whom you don't have any dispute, if this kid you are going to use, you don't have a threat that they will take that document and hand over. But when you call this person, no, there is a high risk. This is a threat to objectivity, no. So you should not use. And they lack some competence, like they don't know how to climb the tree. You cannot call them to ask to climb the tree. Okay. As a function of internal auditor, again, a concept of evaluation of internal control mechanism. So what is the work of an internal audit department to evaluate the internal control? It would amount to weakness in the internal control system if the internal auditor does not apply the test procedure considering material aspect. This would result into high audit risk. So if you don't consider their competence, okay, and if you feel that the lack of sufficient competence, now first of all, why do they exist? They exist to evaluate the internal control. The moment you wanted to use them, the moment you feel, because when you interact only you come to know the person's strength or weakness. The moment you start to evaluate or talk to them or discuss, okay, can I use their work? The moment you feel this person is incompetent, now will it not reflect you something else? The primary person of this person is to evaluate the internal controls. But if this person itself is not competent, that means there must be some significant weakness in the internal control system. So what you need to do, you need to focus more on the evaluation of the internal control. See, is there any high audit risk? Yes. So my first step is complete. What is my first step? What is the first objective? Determining can you use the AI system. So what is the second step? Second step, if you decide to use, what should be the nature and extent of the work that can be assigned to the internal auditor's person? Okay, this particular element, friends, they have given you in the form of a picture. And it looks very irritating also. But I will explain you. Please understand it. And see, exam questions already appeared here. So many questions are there on this particular chart. So what is that they are trying to do? A 15-year boy has come to you asking for help. Now you evaluated him. Okay, is there any, are you prohibited? Answer is no. Is there a threat to objectivity? No, he is nowhere related to my people or the work which I am doing, where I can have a bias. Is he competent? Yes. Okay. Once these 3 elements are said, okay, you decide to hire him for work. Next question comes, What work should I give to this boy? Now, can I give a work which requires climbing of a tree or going to the roof and cleaning? Okay, this type of things they generally do, right? Small kids, because we feel that they are lightweight. Now, can I give such type of work where risk is involved? Answer is no. If we said then what we can use it for? Like I want to clean the window. I can use it. It's a very simple job where no judgments is involved. So, since I need to assign a work, there are two elements. First question, what work should I assign? What should be the nature of the extent of the work? And what I cannot assign. Okay, this is what they have told in this chart. So, the first element, what is that you should consider, deeply think. Simply one person, small boy came and you don't allot the work. Okay, you have to think deeply, like what type of work what are the factors I should consider and what type of work I cannot give. Okay, so they said what you cannot give. The external auditor shall consider the amount of judgments involved in the planning and performing the procedure, like how much judgment will be involved, and evaluation of the audit evidence, and then what is the risk, and is there any threat to the objectivity and the competence. So these are the three factors I should evaluate before assigning him or her some work. Okay, first thing I need to check, if whatever work I give to them, what is the amount of judgment involved? Okay, I need to paint the wall. What is the amount of judgment involved? I can say low. But in this wall, there are some important paintings already given. Okay, like some judgment has to be applied. Okay, how much, what color combination to be used and other things. No, I cannot use. Because if there is a significant judgments, I cannot use the people of the internal audit. Okay, so now the amount of judgment involved in planning and performing procedures. Like if I tell you some work, you need to plan that work and you need to perform. Now in a planning or performing, does it require significant judgments? Like impairment testing, I say go and do impairment testing. Hey, Baba, impairment testing is something which is a very critical activity. Now you need to plan that, you need to gather so much data from so many people. Okay, and you need to perform that test also. You need to talk, you need to have a complex model, and what type of model to be created. Okay, derivative evaluation. Okay, to do the derivative evaluation or a financial instrument evaluation, you need to have a proper planning and you need to perform your procedures properly. It requires a lot of judgments. Now, can I give this job to any internal audit department? No, I should be doing it. Now then, what is that? Inventory observation, counting of the inventory. Can you give? Yes, we can give, provided there is no ROI. Why? Because the amount of judgment involved is very limited. But your inventory is of such that it is very complex, where planning and performing includes a lot of judgment, you should not use. I hope it's very clear, students. So before you assign any work, first you need to decide what work. You need to consider, one, what amount of judgment is involved in planning and performing, and the moment you perform, you need to evaluating the evidence gap. First thing. Second, you need to evaluate the risk, ROMM. And third, you need to check, is there any threat to objectivity and the competence. Okay, so these are all the factors you should be keeping in mind. Then standard only told you which type of work you should not use the internal audit. One, if any of the work includes significant judgments. What is the significant judgment in audit? In planning or performing or evaluation. Anywhere, if you come across any significant, what is significant? Important. What is important? Auditor's professional judgment. So what is judgment? Judgment means decision. See students, what happened? Like for example, I will give you objective and descriptive. Objective is very clear. You need to know now. Okay, ABCD, one of the four. But descriptive can go in any direction. It requires a lot of judgments now. Should I write this particular pattern? I should use this objective, add this additions, or this point I should tell. Now comment among both. See where your judgments are a bit limited. Here it is limited because with the very first out thing only, we will eliminate two. We know that two are meaningless. And your judgment is one among the two. But here that elimination becomes very difficult in the descriptive. So this is called a significant judgments. Related to the high ROMM, if the ROMM is very high, you should not use. Relate to the work which is reported by the management, relate to work which is reported by management or TCWG by internal audit function. That means they have already done some work. To do the same work, don't use them. Already they have done the inventory verification. Same person you don't use for inventory verification. Or relates to the decision external auditor makes related to your SA 610. So what is the meaning of this? Now, you remember one of the Q&A where the external auditor asked the finance manager to do one planning document. Similarly, this is our external auditor, which is you. You call the internal auditor. You ask him only, tell me, sir, which work I can use you? No, let them not tell. You make the decision about use or no use. And if you want to use, which area to use, which type of work to use, or which type of assistance to use, you make a decision. You don't give them this work. You tell me, sir, which area I should use your work. This is what they say. Relate to the decisions external auditor makes as per SSC. I hope, students, this is the most critical thing. I hope you are clear. Let us see some of the Q&As, and before that, I think we will just see this also. Chapter number 16. You can open chapter number 16. So chapter number 16, yesterday only we saw. What is the objective of evaluation of internal audit function? In bracket, you can write by auditor, external auditor, to check the effectiveness of the control. What exactly the scope of internal audit function? The 4 areas. Okay, and it includes appraisal of activity. So first we have seen this evaluation of the work, and only 2 slides were there. Now, whether and in which area, to what extent external auditor can be used to provide assistance. So they didn't speak about the original part here, like threat to evaluate, threat to objectivity, threat to significant, prohibition by the, okay, why? Because this is discussed in chapter 2. Now, if you see, they have given you this particular chart. It's the same chart which you are going to find here. If you decide to use, what is the factors you need to consider, which area you should not give the work. So you need to write this. Hope it's clear. And now, what is missing? External auditor shall evaluate direct assistance, and he should get sufficiently involved. This also we have seen. Now, please note this. This is very important. This is missing there. In fact, if this particular para also would have been given in your chapter number 2, I would have told you totally ignore SA 610 coming in chapter number 16. But what they have done, everything what is there in chapter 16 they have discussed except audit documentation. What if you are going to use the people, direct assistance? Please see, they didn't speak about audit documentation for the work. Please note, if you open the bare standard has told what type of documentation you need to do if you are planning to use the work. That is not told. Leave it. We will out of scope for us. But they told here, if you want to decide to use the people, what type of documentation you need to do? 1, you need to evaluation of the threat to the objectivity and the level of competence. Anyhow you have to do. Now, what is your basis for the decision related to the nature and work performed by the internal auditor? Like, why did you decide to give this particular type of work and to this particular extent? You need, because you must have done that evaluation, no? Whether significant judgment is involved, risk is there, threat is there. So that you need to document, like why you decided to use these people for this particular work. Who reviewed their work? Because your responsibility is what? Once you decide, you need to direct, supervise and review. Who reviewed it and on which date? Because they have become your part of your audit team now. As per SA 230 documentation. Then you are supposed to get one written agreement from the authorized representative of the entity, okay, which we are going to discuss now in the next para. Here, in the next para, we are going to discuss. See, you have to obtain some. I think they have not told here. They are not told, but there is one of the requirement that you have to get in writing from the company that they are not going to interfere in the work of the internal auditors. Because see, please understand, these internal auditors are their people, company's people. So company can interfere in their work. So you should get an agreement in the written agreement from the entity, and that you need to document. And all the working papers, okay, and the internal auditor. That means there must be another document with the written agreement with the internal auditors that they are going to maintain the confidentiality. Yeah, because they will come to know a lot of things about the external auditor. They have to keep quiet. So there should be two written agreements, one with the company, another with the internal auditors. Company, that they are not going to interfere. This particular employee who was selected for assistance, that they are going to maintain confidentiality, and that two written agreements has to be documented. And whatever working papers are prepared by the internal auditors who is providing you direct assistance, that also you should take. Please understand, students, here there is a difference. You may use the internal auditor's work, you may use internal auditor's person. If internal auditor has given his report, he may have work papers. Is this your work papers? No. It is the work paper of that internal auditor only. You cannot ask, it is not your asset. It is internal auditor's asset. Why? Because this internal auditor could have been an employee of the organization, or it can be an independent third practicing CA who is giving internal audit service. You cannot demand the work papers of the internal auditors when you want to use their report. But if you have used their people, then this person has become your team member as per SA 220. So whatever work papers this person has prepared, that you need to retain. It is your work papers. That is the proof that okay, they have done the work, you have reviewed the work. So this is one point you need to keep in mind, students. You need to practice. Let us see some of the examination question. Test your knowledge. 4. Moon Limited. Okay, this came in chapter number 16. You are the statutory auditor of a Moon company having internal audit being conducted by outside agency. I just now told it can be an employee of the company or it can be another practicing CA. What are the factors weigh the considerations in opting to make the direct assistance of the internal auditors for the purpose of statutory audit? Okay, so with this, no, you understood it is 610. You treat it from the chapter number 2 or chapter number 16. It doesn't matter because both the places same points have been discussed. So this question has come in the old syllabus exam also. So what are the factors you consider? First, you can write whether you are prohibited and whether there is any threat to the competency and objectivity. And then you need to consider significant judgments in planning and performing, evaluating ROMM and threat, and you should not use so and so areas. So these are all the factors you need to consider before you decide to take the assistance of the people. Now, question RTP November 14. Okay, so we are done with this RTP November 14. OPQ is in the business of software. Company has the large branches, balance of accounts receivable, assessed with the high risk. Okay, so do you have got accounts receivable who are high risk area? That means this accounts receivable could have been fraud. This could have a high, what is that called, a reserve for bad debts. Now, in respect of valuation of accounts receivable, what do you mean by valuation of accounts receivable? Reserve for bad debts. Because you have got debtors shown at whatever in your financial statement, minus you have got the shown at a fair value because debtors are your financial assets. Like you have to make a provision for impairment of these debtors, which is nothing but reserve for bad debts. So you are looking into the valuation, and this is a high risk. The statutory auditor has assigned checking of the accuracy of the aging of the accounts receivable, because one of the very important element for checking reserve for bad debts is the aging document, and making provisions based on the aging, providing direct assistance. Now question comes, can you use their people? See, he has assigned the work, they are not using the work. So from this, now you understood it is chapter number 3. Okay, SA 610. Now Sheetal appointed as an auditor. Mahi Limited required to appoint an internal auditor as per the statutory provisions. Appointed Kuntu internal auditor. Now the extent external auditor Sheetal asked internal auditor to provide direct assistance, the keyword, regarding evaluating sufficiency of the test performed and adequacy of the disclosures in the financial statement. See, this is also test performed, whether I have planned and performed my test properly. Is it sufficient? This is the decision you should make. Why you are asking that internal auditor? Discuss whether Sheetal can ask direct assistance in respect of above as per relevant standard. Now in November 22, this question came. You see, ABC is engaged in the business of trading and manufacturing. They have got large balances which have been assessed as a high risk area. Okay, so do you see that this question is nothing but your examination question. Which one? Your RTP question or test your knowledge. Sorry, test your knowledge. Now, planning evaluation of the account receivable, assign the checking. Please advise the chartered auditor the areas which direct assistance cannot be taken. So in this case, very specifically told, so you are expected to write this pair, this, not to use internal auditor. Comment, also comment in this, comment. See, first they ask you which areas, advice, you will write 4 areas. Comment in this scenario. Now, question is, can you use them for checking the accuracy of the aging? Yes or no? That's what you need to comment. Rishi appointed as an internal auditor for a medium-sized company, while Nitin statutory auditor of the SPOM Limited. CA Nitin asked Rishi to provide direct assistance in appropriateness of the management's use of going concern. See, going concern requires a lot of planning. Okay, performance also very tricky. Significant judgments are there. You cannot ask. So now how to write an answer? So first thing, SA 610 using the work of internal auditor. Okay. For which question you are going to write? You are going to write only for this. No, you write for everything, but this may fetch you mark among all the 4 questions because they said relevant standard. Second, what are the factors you consider? You start your standard involve significant judgments in assessing the risk. One more thing. Have I marked it as important? Yes, I have marked it as a very important because in the standard they said in the making significant judgments you should not involve. Now, which all areas require significant judgments? They said if you have make significant judgments, you don't involve. I was trying to give you an example of going concern. I was trying to give you an example of that impairment. But in the standard, there are some examples of matters like assessing the assessment of risk of misstatement, where SA 315, identifying an assessment. No, you should not use. Whether sufficiency of the test, have you performed it sufficiently? No, you should not use. Appropriateness of the management use of going concern assumption. Significant accounting estimates to evaluate. SA 540, we are going to talk about accounting estimates. And evaluating adequacy of the disclosures in the financial statement affecting the auditor's report. See, that's why I told you mark it important, because this particular thing is available. These are all the examples of matters which is available in the standard, PAR standard, but not in study material. But they have included in your test your knowledge solution, or in RTP they have, in May 25 they have included, or RTP they have given the solution. So the moment something comes in your RTP or test your knowledge, whether it is part of the study material or not, it became part of your syllabus. Okay, now how to know now? That's why, see, you will miss this flow. What are the significant matters? See, these are all the significant matters, significant judgments. Now, if you see one of the questions they asked about the going concern, another question they asked about this disclosure, maybe in your exam, okay, they asked about sufficiency of the test, they may ask about significant disclosures, high risk that debtors. Okay, now you need to connect. Relate to the high ROMM, internal auditors are involved, fraud risk, this is also external element, surprise audit procedure. So these are all the additional things. Okay, maybe this is given by the board of studies or some other parent must be appearing. So these are all the areas you should not be using them. Now, assessed as an audit high risk area, shall not take the assistance. So in the given case, you should not take in assistance in significant accounting estimates, like for example, reserve for bad debts, sufficiency of the test performed, adequacy of the disclosure, going concern. But you can assign them for arithmetical accuracy. That means if any model has been prepared, you can ask them to check whether the totaling is correct. Okay. Suppose if you external confirmation, Which customer should be selected for external confirmation? Don't use. But sending to the courier, making one report, okay, small report of like whom the letter has been sent, making a follow-up call. So this type of activities you can. I hope it's clear, students. Next, chapter 16, textual knowledge, question 5. Anand is appointed as an auditor. Now, external auditor asked internal auditor to provide direct assistance, the keyword, evaluating significant estimates and by assessing the ROMM. Discuss, can you use their assistance for the above purpose? Will your answer be different if in respect of external confirmation request and evaluation of the results, if you can use it? No, none of this activity we can use it. But external confirmation, we can use them for routine tasks. Like I told you, couriering, following up and all. So you will write the same answer. You should not use them for significant judgment. And these are all the examples of significant judgments. Okay, external confirmation process also. However, you may assist in assembling information necessary for external auditor to resolve the exceptions, like following up, okay, doing one report, getting the data, opening of that letter, compiling, such type of work you can use. Now, why? Because SA 505 says that external auditor is required to maintain the control over internal confirmation request. So in the given case, you should not be using all this thing. But when it comes to external audit, external confirmation, you should not use them for making decisions, but you can use them for creating exceptions. That's why student, this question also I have marked it as important. Now, November 24, your examination question came. Okay, so we have already seen this. Now, November 24 examination question. Let's see what they have asked. I think we can reduce the priority also, because already this question has been asked in the exam. UV Limited is a large multinational company. Due to voluminous business, it has in-house internal audit function. Now, chartered accountants have been engaged to conduct the statutory auditors, some chartered accountants. Since the company has large-scale operation, has limited time to perform the stat audit, CAL, engagement partner, decide to take the direct assistance. Okay, now your mind is very clear that they are talking about the 610. In 610, they are talking about the use of the people. Now, CAL assigns the audit documentation part to one of his audit assistants and instruct him to do the required documents of the working papers. Now, further, he tells his audit assistants not to document the working papers prepared with the internal auditors who are directly assistants. Wrong. You remember the fifth point here. Fifth point is to include their working papers also as part of the documentation. Okay, so that means you can reduce the priority for this. Okay, I told in the study material mark it important when previously, because when previously I have seen this question, I had marked it. So we can reduce that priority, because this question they have already asked. Now, is CA right in excluding the working papers prepared by the internal auditors from audit documentation? Answer is no. Guide them related to the matters to be included in the documentation. And you see, students, you see here how ICA is doing. They could have given this documentation also in chapter number 3. Everything would have been very clear to you. But you see, this is how they design this paper. Everything related to the internal auditors they discussed in chapter number 3, but documentation they discussed in chapter 16. In chapter 16, some components they discussed. Now see, this is they try to create confusion. What they are trying? Okay, have you observed the documentation is something new there? Now see, in the examination they will ask you question from there. But once you are clear, your strategy is known. Okay, the moment you figure out some gems, this is a gem for us. Why? Because we know these questions can appear for the exam. So we have to focus. This is high risk area for us. When you see the contradictions, you see the language is different, you see that they have told something here, something there, one portion is told here, some unknown portion comes from nowhere. See, I always call them as a gem because they are high probable examination. Okay, answer is very straightforward. So you are going to tell all these things. This particular point you are going to connect, and they say contention is not. Okay, next one, MTP question. STU have been the statutory auditors of the First and Last Limited for the past 4 years. Engagement partner designed certain substantive procedure on selected assertions in response to risk of misstatement under audit. Fine. Now, when you identify ROMM, please understand it is always at the assertion level. When you talk about assertion level risk, there are two audit procedures. You could have done test of controls or substantive procedures. Now, what he has decided to do? He has decided to do substantive procedure. Why? Probably that controls are not effective in this organization for that particular assertion. For other assertion, control may be effective. Like in respect to the essence risk, these particular assertions were not examined by him in the previous year due to lack of materiality or risk consideration. That means last year, this particular assertion either may not have been material or they may not have been risky. That's why last year you didn't see. So you don't know much about that particular area. That's why you may decided to do substantive test for this item this year. But it has become risky area or it must have become a material item. Now, Mr. X leads the internal audit department and reports to the company's audit committee. See, organization status. That means they are much objective. And from this, no, you understood that they must be speaking about 610. Because till now, you didn't have any clue what exactly, which chapter they are trying to ask this question. During the course of the audit, the senior member of the engagement team decides to engage Mr. X. That means the person. That's the second element. Not work, the person, for providing direct assistance is the keyword in performing the above substantive procedures. See, first of all, you decided to do this substantive procedure, probably it must have been high risk or highly material, or test of controls may not be effective. That means this substantive procedure must be having significant judgments now, not limited judgments. Comment with respect to the relevant standards on audit, you say 610. Also indicate the activities to be performed by the statutory auditor prior to the using of the providing the direct assistance. Okay, so this is where we will go for the second portion here. What all the activities to be performed? So now you say SA 610 using the work of internal auditor, relevant standard. Now what all the examples of activities is not appropriate is to do fraud risk factor, surprise. You can write, you can go back and write this answer. These are all the activities you are not supposed to use them. Plus ROMM. Okay, you can write your own answer. Now, in the above engagement, you design, this is the story. That means such audit assertions were not tested in the previous because of the materiality. It is now being incorporating an element of unpredictability. So, in which perspective you must have been using this? Last year you didn't test. So, what people will think, okay, Baba, it is auditor is not considering because it is immaterial or it is low risk. Maybe problem must have been happening there. Now you decided to do this, that to substantive test because you may wanted to bring one element of unpredictability. But now when you bring this unpredictability and you get one person associated with the organization, don't you think he may tell others, he can alert others that fraudulent reporting, sir, this is going to test. Therefore, in such matters, using internal auditor be very counterproductive and defeat the very provision. Hence, decision of the senior management is not proper. So, what you need to do? You need to obtain written agreement from the company that entity will not interfere in the work. Obtain written agreement from the internal auditor that they will keep the things confidential. This is what I told you, students. If you see chapter 16, you see how they do it. They said written agreement. Did they tell you which written agreement? Nowhere. Absolutely nowhere in the study material you will see this. Which written agreement? But there are two written agreements. Where they told that there are two written agreements? They didn't tell in the study material. Instead, they told in your test your knowledge 14 question. And what is that? If you want to use them, okay, maybe for a low risk area, what you should do? What activity you need to do? You need to have a written agreement. There are two types of written agreement. And then you can write point number C, direct, supervise, review. This is what you need to do. Plus point number T, document. Done. Your work is complete. I hope it's clear. Okay, so you can mark it as I have already marked it as a priority 1. Why? Because some components are coming from nowhere, outside. Now, similar question in MTP. Last year, because of the materiality or risk consideration, they have thought it in a, not to do. UG leads the department and senior management decide to use. Now, comment with respect to the standards on auditing, indicate as performed by the auditor. Now, you may ask me, sir, this is the same question. Why did you write it separately? Can't we mix here? Because this MTP and test your knowledge is same. Here also answer is same. But look at the pattern in which they write. Here, these points are written at the end. Here, they start with this. They are not prohibited by the law or regulation. Have they told you in the previous MTP? They didn't tell. Significant threat to objectivity and competence. In the current scenario, then the same story. As a result, it's becoming going to be counterproductive. Okay, you wanted to bring the element of engagement partner substantive procedure. As a result, they are required to obtain written agreement from both the entity and the internal auditors for confidentiality. Using the internal auditor could prove to be very counterproductive and defect to very provision. Hence, decision of the senior management is not in order. Did you see the answer is same, students? But did you see the way in which they have answered in two different ways? That means, students, it is not just possible for you to remember everything. Huh? Please understand. What you need to remember is this concepts. This flow you need to remember. These keywords you need to remember. And you need to get that articulation skill of writing that using keywords. And that you get when you read and write. Read this contents and start writing. That exercise anyhow you are doing. That's why we have marked this important, because the moment I see somewhere that same answer, two different versions or something new coming here, for me it is like a time bomb. I say has keeping track of all these things. Huh? Please understand, there's a lot of noise that AI is using. We already discussed previously also. So why AI is required, Baba? You only have the track of which is tricky, where you have confused students there, where you are given in the form of a picture, and inside picture you are given the content, expecting students to make their own notes. Because you know now what is that area, because you know all high risk areas. Okay, so this is all about your thing. And then what is the review of the work performed? Because you need to direct, supervise, review. So you need to direct, supervise and review, and in doing so you need to recognize one fact that they are not independent. So review procedure shall include external auditor checking back underlying audit evidence of some of the work performed. Like for example, external confirmation. Can you use them to review the aging? Answer is no. Can you use them to pick the customers? Answer is no. Can you use them to draft the content of the report? No. Can you use them to print the letters and put it in the envelope? Answer is yes. Can you use them to courier it to the, okay, printing also no, you don't use them for printed. You only put that. Because why printing and putting this in the envelope? Because when you are trying to put it in the envelope, your unpredictability is lost. The organization comes to know which customer you may be talking. Okay, so now sending it to the people, can you use? Yes. Couriering it, bringing this letter, you can use it. But what you need to do, you need to cross verify some of the evidence. They have to see have they really sent it. Okay, so on a sample basis you can verify. Now the direction, supervision, review with the external auditor shall be sufficient in order to external auditor satisfied that you have obtained sufficient evidence. So with this we are done with essay 610. Okay, so we will make these notes. With this we are complete with the, and to next class we may go for essay 620. Yeah, because 620 is another type. It will take time for us to understand, because very important, because no discussion comes in the intermediate level. At least internal auditor comes. I have shown you so many, like planning comes, so many questions we have seen. Internal audit is also discussed, but they are not asking questions there. They are asking questions in the final. But 620 and 540 are very important standards, because they are exhausting question in chapter number 1. Till now, your SQC1 was the very famous chapter for them to ask question. But slowly they may shift their focus into 620 and 540. Why? Because among 620, at least 540 is more ROMM for me, risk for me. Because of the language, because of the flow, because of the way they design it. Okay, so we'll discuss that. So go back to mind map. So we have written external internal audit direct assistant. The first factor you need to consider, determine whether to use assistant. Shall I use their assistance? This is the thing you need to determine. Okay, what are the factors you consider? One, not prohibited. Work, this question doesn't come. But if you want to use the people, remember child labor. First thing, not prohibited. Second, no threat. Or second thing you need to evaluate, threat. Two, objectivity plus competence. Yeah, disciplined approach and all, you will not focus there because you will bring the discipline, because the moment they work with you, you go at 4 o'clock early in the morning, will you permit them to go at 8 o'clock in the evening? No, they will also stay with you only. So discipline automatically they will learn when they start working with you. Yeah, these are all the factors you need to evaluate. So now one question comes, when you talk about the objectivity, factors threatening objectivity. One small concept comes here. Which of the factors threaten the objectivity? One, org status. Personal relationships. I can say include family also. That means they are relatives. Association with departments in which you wanted to use some work. And fourth, financial interest. They are holding shares, they have got some bonus coming, and if they figure out that your result of you are asking to make them a big provision, they say that they can see that their bonus is getting reduced. No, so they may not be objective in their work. Okay, done. The second one, okay, so this is the first object, determining whether to use the assistance. The second factor you need to evaluate here, determine nature and extent of assistance. Okay, what to consider? When not to use. These are the 2 points they are going to talk. So what you need to consider? One, judgments. Where in planning and performing evaluation of evidence. You need to consider planning and performing evaluation of the judgment. Second, ROMM. Third, threat to objectivity, competence. These are the three factors you need to evaluate. Okay, which all the work you should not use? I can write something here. Which work you are not supposed to use them? One, significant judgments. Okay, can you give me some examples of significant judgments? Yes. Where significant judgments are going to come? It is going to come here because this content is there in the test your knowledge. High ROMM area, significant judgments will come. Then estimates, then going concern, financial statement disclosures. Okay, have we covered? In the Q&A, we are going to find this answer, these examples. Sorry, assessment of ROMM, estimates, sufficiency of the test. It is not ROMM, it is not sorry, it's not a high ROMM. You can please change ROMM assessment. In ROMM assessment, estimates, going concern, financial disclosures, and sufficiency of test. Okay, whether my test is sufficient or not. Yes, there you have significant judgments. Then second, high ROMM areas, don't use them. ROMM assessment, don't use them here when you talk about significant, because it requires significant judgment. And if you figure out there is one high area ROMM, in that area also you don't use them. Please understand, both are two different elements. Assessment of ROMM happens at 315. Using at high ROMM area happens at 330, because you are practically trying to get the evidence there. No, both the places don't use. Now, relate to reported work, I can say. That means to which they belong to. Whatever work they have already done, because it will have a self-review threat. And four, decisions related to internal audit. So whatever decisions you make related to internal audit function, you should not use them. So this is the key. So when you talk about determining nature and extent, what to consider, these are the three factors to consider. When not to use, when you have got significant judgments, where 5 examples they are given. Okay, you can add more. And you can add more here. Point number 5. Fraud risk factor, because in one of the Q&A we have seen this fraud risk factor. Don't use them. You don't discuss the fraud risk factors. Then external confirmation, because SA 505 says that you have to get involved. So you have to quote as per SA 505. You can quote that. Already in Q&A we have seen this content. So when something is coming in the Q&A, we have to adhere to it. And the last one, unpredictability. Okay, unpredictable this thing is element of surprise. Surprise audit procedure. So what we have done in our mind map, no, we have included the content of our Q&A also. This is our content of a Q&A, and these three are the content of the Q&A. We have included that. Okay, so now how to frame the next part now. You remember, students, three things we discussed when we talk about, okay, I hope you have done this. If I take you back, see here, determining whether the work can be used. We have got three: objectivity, integrity, competency, disciplined approach. Assistance can be used, prohibition by law, threat. If using whether the work is adequate, for this what we did this, determining the nature and scope to be used, and then using the work, discuss, read, perform. This is that last para, review the work, but some portion they have already given in your Q&A. So that's why now we will streamline it. So we have written the first one, should I use them? Okay, not prohibited and threat. Second, determining the nature and extent. And next thing, the third thing, using assistance. Write this. First thing, written agreement. You need to have, first thing is written agreement. With whom? Entity, that they are not going to interfere. Internal auditors, that they are going to maintain confidentiality. Second thing, they are going to perform, okay, I can say direct, because once you enter into agreement, then only you start directing them. After directing, you supervise them, and after supervise, you review them. So keep in mind during this process that, so mind, I can say, keep in mind that they are not independent. And second thing, check underlying evidence. Review means you have to check the underlying evidence also, what they have done. And the third thing, you have to do the documentation. I hope this has brought a clarity to your studies. You are able to understand it better now, because what I have done now, I have not only taken some components from some other chapter from the Q&A also. And this is how a batch standard will look like. If you go and read the batch standard, these are all the sub procedures. First, have a written agreement, direct and supervise, and then do the documentation. What all the things you need to document? Okay, so that we can refer this point. Anyhow, we have this question has already come for the exam. Evaluation of threat, nature and extent of assistance, like how did you evaluate nature and extent of assistance. The third, who reviewed on which date. Fourth, two written agreements. And fifth, work papers of internal audit assistant. These are all the things you are going to document. So now you can frame the answer. See, once you know the content, let them ask you anything. Should I use the internal auditor? What are the factors you consider? Which area I should not use them? What you are going to document? What is that how you are going to use them? See, let them ask any question. You will be in a position to use that plug and play, students. They ask you standard, you write the name of the standard. They say, what is that internal audit function is going to do? You write the first objective. See, in exam, they can ask you anything. No? Please understand. The question what you see in the Q&A, they may not ask you the same. So once you have that entire flow in your brain, okay, how it moves, what it happens, then you can start playing with this topic, playing with this subject. I hope it is done. So with this, we are done with the third concept, and write the next concept. Concept number 4, SA 620, auditors expert. It's very important. This and SA 540. With this, we are done with the chapter, and I hope somewhere 15 to 17% of the syllabus we are done, students. You see, we will not realize only. You will also not realize we are sitting, spending some time every day. And after some time, no, so much things we would have done. No? And I'm telling you, after we complete the standard, no, we get momentum. See, today these things are taking time for us. I cannot rush also. Because you have seen, no, so the level of complexity we are there trying to create. So we have to spend time there. We have to understand, make our thinkings very clean. But after some time, like chapters are very small. Okay, 5 and 6, so in one session only I may finish. Okay, then we have gone to chapter number 9, 10, 11. They are very small chapters. See, that's why we get momentum, students. Please understand, it may look very slow now. Sir, what is this? Only 15, 16, 17% of the syllabus we have completed till now. But later, no, you are going to get that full momentum, and it is much easier. Once we understand how initial, like they have designed it, it becomes very easy for you to prepare. And I hope you are seeing the effect of what you are writing, what you are preparing. See, test also you must have written. Thank you, students.